Welcome to The Recovering Perfectionist, where you'll learn all the hacks you need to get started and finished on your business or project. You'll connect with successful entrepreneurs who are in perfectionist rehab, unapologetically experimenting and balancing life, business, family, and me time. I'm your host and Chief Recovering Perfectionist, Claire Barton. Hey everyone, Claire Barton, the Recovering Perfectionist. How you going? This is a beautiful new episode, I hope, and a beautiful new start to a series where I'm going to do some more solo shows. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about me and what I do and my experience and all of that sort of thing. So I've been getting some really beautiful feedback since the beginning of the podcast saying, we love the show, we love the interviews, we love the conversations, but we still want to know a bit more about you, and we want to know what you do and where you came from. And often I'll say something like, oh yeah, when I used to do such and such, and people are like, what? We didn't know you did that. So I thought I would do a little mini series on all of that sort of thing. So this is one of those. And today what I wanted to actually talk to you about is my very long and very rich retail history. So for those of you who don't know, I did work in retail for about 1,000 years before I started my business, which was, and there's been other things in between there as well. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about retail and what I learned from my massive amount of years in retail. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll just start right back at the very beginning, quite a long time ago. It feels like forever ago. When I was in high school, I spent my high school years in Darwin in the Northern Territory of Australia. And when I was in about, I think, grade 9 or grade 10, I got my first job. So I was 14 and 7 months when I was given a job, but you couldn't start until you were 14 and 9 months. So I had to wait. And then on the day that I was officially 14 years and 9 months old, I got to start my first job. And that was at a little shop, you might know if you're Australian, called Best and Less. It's kind of like, it's a department store. It's all, I think, clothing and linen and Manchester and that sort of thing these days. And it was my first job. And when I first started working there, it hadn't opened yet. So I was involved for the first, month or so in doing all the preparation, like ticketing, all the boring stuff, and folding tea towels and folding underwear for hours and hours on end. And I'm not even kidding you. However, I worked there on late night shopping and on the weekends until I left school. And I finished school just after I turned 17, and I moved interstate, and stayed with them for a little bit longer down there, but it didn't quite work out for various reasons. But I was with them for a couple of years while I was finishing school. By the time I was 16, I was a service supervisor. So on the weekends, in the evenings, I was supervising up to probably about 30 staff or so, especially on the cash registers. I am, as you'll know, a bit of an attention to detail freak, a bit of a recovering perfectionist. So anything to do with customer service and all the sort of, the finance side, making sure that everything balanced okay and that sort of thing was definitely up my alley. So I also was quite technical. I still am quite technical. I get registers and systems, all that sort of thing. Anyway, so I was a supervisor pretty early on. I also, towards the end of school, took up some other jobs. So I worked in pubs, bars. I worked in a nightclub for a little while. I guess that wasn't while I was at school, it was just after. I worked in restaurants and cafes and that sort of thing. Definitely not quite my jam as much as retail seemed to be. Hospitality and getting dirty and wet didn't really sort of suit me. I was awful at carrying 3 plates and I used to drop them all the time. That's why I ended up in the bar, because they wouldn't trust me to carry food. Oopsie, sorry guys. That's another story. Long story short, I worked I moved to Adelaide for uni. I did that. I was in Adelaide for about 1.5 years, and then I went back to Darwin and was supposed to be there for like 4 weeks. Ended up staying for about 2.5 years, and I started managing another store there completely by accident again. I think I was supposed to be working in this store that was like a pop-up store for 4 weeks, and it ended up, staying as it was. And then whatever happened, and I ended up managing one, two, three, four, five or six different stores throughout the state. So I was about 19 when I first got my official store management role. I was 19 and my 2IC was 58. So she was almost 3 times my age, which completely freaked me out. She'd been in retail for like, I don't know, 50 something years. She'd been there forever. She knew the company inside out. She knew the store inside out. And she was very, very, I'd probably say stuck in her ways, but most of them were good ways and were very helpful. And she was actually really helpful and really fantastic in my induction and that sort of thing. So she was great. Then I met my husband while I was up there. So we moved to Sydney together. I worked for a very, very small retailer for about 6 weeks. It just didn't work out. My husband was in the army at the time, so he was down there on training exercise. I went down, I think, on a Friday. I spent the weekend looking at jobs in the newspaper, back then. On Monday and Tuesday, I applied for jobs, made telephone calls, sent emails, that sort of thing. And then between Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, I had 11 job interviews and I had 10 job offers by Friday afternoon. And the 11th one, we decided in the interview that we weren't quite right for each other. So 100% job success rate, 100% job offer rate, which was really cool. And the job that I took was promised profit share, and it was a very progressive company. Like I said, I worked there for about 6 weeks, and after I've been there 3 days, I was whisked away on this amazing management conference where we went to the river and we slept on houseboats, and it was a real party atmosphere. They had a DJ there 24/7. It was just absolutely fantastic. But the style of the company was a little bit too party for me as well, and there just wasn't enough systems and infrastructure, and I didn't get paid for like 8 weeks. It was after I finished up that I finally got paid and all that sort of thing that just kind of didn't sit very well with me. So I kind of went back hat in hand to one of the other places that had offered me a job, which was Sports Girl, and said, that job you offered me a couple of months ago, can I have it now? And fantastic. They were absolutely fantastic. And yes, I definitely could have that job. So that was really nice. So I worked there for about a year and a bit, and then my husband and I went backpacking. So we went to Europe for 6 months, or went to Europe for a year and a half, and we backpacked for about 6 months. And then I was working at the most amazing, the Gap store, the European flagship Gap store on Oxford Street in London, right next to Selfridges. So it was a beast, an absolute beast in itself. So there I worked on the women's floor. I was called an associate manager, so one of the store managers. It was, I think, during the normal part of the year, we had about 80 staff just on our floor, and then over Christmas it went up to about 150. So within the whole business, there were the 5 floors, including the stock room. I think there was probably over 500 staff at peak, and a management team of probably around 30 or something like that. So it was an absolute beast of a business to be part of. The day before Christmas, we turned over £1 million, just over £1 million in one day, with everything on almost half price. It was almost like a £2 million day. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. And it was, like I said, it was just amazing being part of such a huge operation, a huge business with such global recognition. We often had the owners of the company who were an American couple in their 70s, I guess, at the time, who would, pop in, and it was all very sort of straight laced, and, had to have everything perfect and that sort of thing. But having that sort of exposure was fantastic. So I also got to do extra things like event management for an Amex event that we partnered with for them, and that sort of thing. So that was really cool. Then we moved back to Australia, and I came back and I was working for Country Road for about 4 years. So I started in a store called Carindale. It was a cluster, so it had 3 stores, which was the actual standalone store, and then the concession stores in Myer and David Jones. Then I was at another Queensland store in Indooroopilly. I had 3 stores there, and then for the last 2 years I was at Country Road. I was actually in the city. So again, back to the state flagship cluster. So we had a beautiful heritage listed ex-bank building that we were in, and then also the 2 stores. And I also got fantastic opportunities to take on some extra responsibilities when the state manager was away or that sort of thing. So I got to actually do some state management with multi-sites all around Queensland, which was absolutely amazing. So that's it in a nutshell, in terms of where I worked and what my kind of retail journey was like. So then in 2000 and I think it was the 27th of December 2010, I did my last day at Country Road because I took some career break to go traveling. I went to India for 3 months, and then I came back and I ended up studying massage therapy. It's just another one of the things I used to do. And I never went back, long story short. So from about, what are we talking, like it was almost 15, 16 years, something like that I was working in retail. So I know it really well. Well, I knew it really well. It's probably changed a lot in the last 6 years since I worked there. But there's a couple of things that happen when you work in retail. And I'm sure anyone who works in retail now will agree with this, that I used to get really shitty at, because I was working really hard, and I was working, I had so much responsibility. Like in some of those jobs, like I said, I had up to 100 staff. I think in the most recent place, we had about 80 staff across 3 different locations. We were turning over $11 million a year. Our profit was probably around 6 to 10%, something like that, which is pretty good for a retailer in the city when you're paying some massive amounts of money on rent alone, and all that sort of thing. And people used to say, oh, no, you just work in a shop. And, there's this whole stigma about, if you still work in a shop, you still work in retail, you mustn't be very smart. You mustn't have been able to get into uni, or you must be a bit of a dropout, that sort of thing. And it used to make me so shitty. I remember having a conversation with someone at an Australia Day party, probably in about 2009 or something like that. And, she said, how are you going? How's work and everything? I said, oh, it's so busy. Like, it's just been crazy. And she looked at me and you could hear the crickets, and she was like, what, did you have to do rosters or something? And I'm like, really? Really? This is an $11 million business. Like, I'm not just sitting around twiddling my thumbs and looking pretty in my nice Country Road gear. This is an actual business, So I used to get really cranky about that sort of thing. However, when I sort of stepped back and swallowed my pride and got over all of that sort of thing, I was actually okay with it because, from the age of 19 or whatever, I'd been earning amazing money. Like, the companies I worked for, as far as retailers go, were fantastic. But as far as a 19-year-old goes, it was amazing. And to be getting a lot of the personal and professional development opportunities that I got as well were fantastic. I did 4 diplomas through them, including management and business management. And in doing those, I was able to work on projects which created massive change for the companies, which was like, who does that when they're in their early 20s? I'm sure a lot of people do it, but anyway, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool opportunity. So by the time that most of my friends were sort of finishing uni and starting to get entry-level jobs, I was earning almost $100,000 a year just doing retail management, and that was pretty cool. And look, the last couple of years that I was in retail, I wouldn't say I loved it. I didn't completely hate it, but I'd kind of gotten a bit over the weekends and the late nights and the long hours, and seeing how much money we were sort of turning over, and not feeling like it's not going home with me. I want that money. Like, I want to be working hard and I want to be earning that money. So that was really what planted the seed for me to have my own business, because I've been running everyone else's businesses for 15 years and I've been running them pretty bloody well. And I used to joke with people, right, every time I left a job, I'm like, I'm not doing management again. I just want to go. I just want to do my 8 hours. I want to rock up, be told what to do it really well, and go home. And then every time I did that, I'd end up in a management role within about 5 minutes. Like, I don't know, it's just a thing I did. So I just wanted to share, I guess, some of the things that I think I really learned from working in retail, and how I apply them to my business now, or how I apply them to my life now. And so some of those things are obviously business acumen, and it never really used to make sense to me. It didn't really, that word's a bit corporate or whatever, but it's definitely a thing, right? So I think of business acumen as just kind of getting business. It's a thing that you either, wouldn't say you get or you don't get, but some people it seems really natural to. And I feel like business is really natural to me. Like I get the customer service thing, I get the finance thing, I get the whole diplomacy about trying to run a business and run an organization and keep the organization happy and also keep the customers happy and keep the staff happy and all of that sort of thing, and trying to kind of balance all of those things at once, which I think is a really difficult thing at a lot of the time. And if you know anyone who's a consumer, you can probably pinpoint some retailers who get one or the other right and not the rest of it, sort of thing. And it is a really tricky sort of balancing act. So for me, business acumen is kind of that getting at a business. There's obviously lots of flow-on effects and that sort of thing that I'll talk about in a second as well. But the business acumen is absolutely a thing that you kind of get exposure to or you don't. The retailers I worked for, by and large, were absolutely fantastic in giving me and the other management managers in teams a lot of autonomy and a lot of transparency around how the business was run from a very high level and how that filtered down and what that meant for everybody. So I remember back when I was at Sports Girl, I had an absolutely fantastic regional manager, and she used to, the first time that she sat down and she shared the profit and loss reports with me for my store and for, I guess, the state, maybe the company, I was like, looking at her like, are you supposed to be showing me this? Like, are you allowed to show me this sort of thing? And she said, well, this is your business. This is your thing to look after. Like, if we hire our managers not just to have a manager in store just to look after customer complaints or something. Like, you're here to grow the business as well. You're here to get to know the customers and to get to know what they need and to filter that up to head office to make sure that you've got the right stock, staff. The whole atmosphere of the shop is kind of where it needs to be and that sort of thing. So that was kind of my first foray. And then right up to when I was working for Country Road, we had absolute control and autonomy over so many aspects of the business, including the recruitment and the stock levels and the finances and that sort of thing. So we could actually see how and where and why we were or weren't making money. We had the profit and loss reports, we had our stock reports, we had just so many reports. So sometimes it ended up a little bit analysis paralysis, but in retrospect, it was just amazing having access to that much information as a store manager or as a cluster manager. Was just fantastic. So in that sense, like I finished doing maths halfway through grade 11 and I got a D, my very first and only ever D that I got in anything, because I hated it. I didn't get maths, and I always sort of said, like, I did drama and art and biology and geography because I had to do something scientific-ish, and drama and English and that sort of thing. Like, they were my things. I certainly was not a mathematician. But nowadays I look at my business finances and I think if I did business finance in high school, I would have been absolutely brilliant at it. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I am now because I've had access to all of that sort of thing, and I've had it in a way that makes sense. It's not just doing algebra and algorithms and percents and I don't know. See, this is how good I am at maths. I don't even know the right terminology for it, but all of those sorts of things that I wouldn't have really got before. But now I can see like all how it actually works in a real life situation in a business sense, because I understand the business, and so I can apply the numbers to it and I understand the numbers. Then now when I do my business now for myself and for my clients, I have a really good understanding of how the numbers work and where they sort of need to be, or at least in that planning sense of things. I'm not a bookkeeper or an accountant by any stretch of the imagination, but I know enough about it now that I can get through it, and I can actually teach other people how to do it as well. So the finance management was like just amazing, just absolutely amazing, the things that I get and the things that I can now ask for from my bookkeepers and accountants and from clients' bookkeepers and accountants, to make sure that everyone's got the information that they need and they can be empowered about their numbers and all of that sort of thing. So finance management was a massive one, right? Another thing, obviously, customer service, client relationship, whatever you want to call it. It's that, I guess, that kind of inbuilt system to look after the people, because you understand that the people you piss off because you don't do very good customer service for aren't going to come back. And those people who aren't going to come back, they're going to go somewhere else, whether it's your another store, but it's not your store, or it's a totally different competitor or whatever. And those conversations just aren't worth having. Like, I remember saying to some of my staff sometimes, like, just do it. I know it's a rule. I know that there's this policy, this underlying policy that basically says don't give them a refund. But if it's getting out of hand, it's getting a bit crazy, and you're like, it doesn't really matter, just give them a refund. It's not coming out of our pocket. We'd rather keep them. And there's so many people who, you know what it's like when when you have a bad experience in a shop, you just want to tell everyone, like, this bitch in the store, she was this and she was that, and they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And the people are more than happy to tell you how bad service was. But people are pretty hard pressed going out and telling other people how good your service was. So that was a bit of a kind of internal mantra for me that I tried to instill in my teams and that sort of thing, to try and be so, fantastic, and so make things so easy for your clients. So they have to go and tell someone. Like, make that a personal mission of yours, and it's a total game changer in your attitude as well as in the customer experience as well. So that's something that definitely sort of, I hope, and I'm pretty sure filters through in my business now. Another thing that retail taught me was human resource management, managing people. So after I left the corporate world, after I left the retail world, I entered the corporate world. I did a little stint, like I said, I studied massage for 6 months, and then I started my very first business officially, which was called the Balance Bar, which was all about remedial massage therapy. And after I did that, I went into recruitment, just part-time. I thought that's what I wanted to do because I thought it was a little bit similar to HR and all that sort of thing. Quickly discovered it was not my bag. However, I had so much experience from working in retail, from hiring, from performance management, training, induction, upskilling, competency-based frameworks, that sort of thing, and reviews and everything, because I'd had so much exposure to that while I was in retail for so long, in retail management for so long, and having teams, massive teams that I had to manage. It just became something that was like really easy for me. So I guess how that translates to my business now is that, not that I have a team, but I do have a group of people, I guess we could call them a team of people who work for me as outsourced VAs and support people. And for a little while in my business last year in 2016, I was also outsourcing to my clients. I'm not doing that anymore, but it did make that sort of process quite easy, because I know how to manage people. I know how to find the right people. I know how to manage them. I know how to task. I know how to delegate. Interestingly, early on, one of my very first regional managers, when I was having a review, when I was about 19 or 20, she kept saying, the one thing you need to work on is delegation. You're burning yourself out. You are trying to do too much. You're trying to do it all perfectly. Guilty. Totally recovering perfectionist, right? And I had this thing, and probably 3 managers, so 3 different businesses that I was in, had sort of said that throughout the course of my retail career. You need to delegate more. You need to delegate more. You need to delegate more. And it was finally when someone said, why aren't you delegating? And I was like, well, I just think they're not going to do it as well as I would, so I might as well just do it. And she was like, well, you need to train them better. I was like, oh my God, that's so true. So there was another fixation for me to go and work on, was training them better rather than just doing it myself better. So that kind of shifted my thinking and my focus on all of that sort of thing. So that definitely made a difference. So the delegation thing, I found was like a kind of an interesting speed hump. It's definitely something that's inherently changed how I do things these days, because I'm really, really fastidious about how I train people and the systems and processes that I can create to make that handover and training a bit easier. So the human resource management in that sort, and the people management is probably a nicer way of putting it, was definitely a big thing. So now I can also use that in how I manage my clients, as well as how I manage my team and my people, and how I can coach my clients into managing the team and all that sort of thing. Like, how people work is so interesting. Here's a fun fact. When I first left school, I went to uni and I did psychology for a year because I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. So interestingly, when I went into corporate, back a step. So I used to say to people, I left psychology because I didn't want to listen to people's problems all the time, every day. And then I went and got a job in retail and did it anyway. Ha ha ha. Funny, not funny. Like, it was seriously like that, because people come in and they just whinge and bitch to you quite often, whether it's staff or customers. So just that FYI. Then when I went to work in recruitment and for this management consulting firm, I was working with psychologists. So they were all like org psychs and, all that sort of thing. So it's interesting that I've kind of maintained a bit of a thread there that I think is really interesting. And it's definitely something that sticks out to me as, it just lights me up. I love hearing the conversations. I love being part of those sorts of conversations, and just knowing what makes people tick and how human psychology in a workplace or in a business works is really, really interesting as well. So that's quite cool. What else? I guess the last couple of things that retail definitely taught me is around that design, that visual merchandising. So visual merchandising, marketing, design, making things beautiful. When I first started this business, it was called Order and Beauty. And there's still a bit of a thread of that. So I think my newsletter is still called that and that sort of thing. So Order and Beauty was definitely like kind of what I was creating. Like I like having things organized. Obviously, that's what I do. I'm a planner and I'm an organizer. But there was also this beauty side of it. Like I don't want to just have ugly spreadsheets or ugly filing systems or ugly bookshelves or something, even if it's, I'd wanted it to be beautiful as well as orderly and as well as organized. So that sort of thing. I guess in terms of having a design eye, I've always been quite creative and artistic and that sort of thing, although I feel like I lost that during my 20s somehow, and I'm hoping to reestablish it, and I feel like I'm reestablishing it a bit now. Thank God for Canva. So it taught me a little bit about that kind of eye for detail in terms of the aesthetics of things and how things look and how things look affect your brand. So it's not just your branding, it's not just having a nice logo, it's actually the whole physical and visual experience that people get from interacting with every part of your brand. So if some retailers, Country Road is definitely a really good one at this. You walk in their store and they all kind of feel the same. They've all got that beautiful smell from the candle. They've all got the beautiful plush textures everywhere. Most of them have got some live plants. I think there's some stores these days that have got coffee machines and like little cake stalls and that sort of thing. Like it's got this really tangible, beautiful feeling about it. And you go into a store and it just feels like Country Road. It just feels like that's where you're going into, right? And that's a beautiful experience. So I feel like that's something that I do try and bring into my business and to encourage my clients to bring into their business as well, is that beautiful, palpable kind of tangible experience for their customers. And Ali Wycheck, who's been on the show earlier, she talks to this beautifully. She's a customer journey and customer experience marketing guru, and she talks about this kind of consistent brand feel. So how you're setting up your brand and what sort of experience you're giving your customers at every touch point through your business. So I won't go on any more about that, but if you want to check out, I think she was about episode 4, if you want to go back and listen to that one if you've not listened already. It was absolutely amazing. But I'm a massive fan of Ali's, as anyone who's ever heard me speaking will know probably. And I guess, look, the last thing that working in retail really taught me, which I've touched on a little bit already, is that I just didn't want to make money for anyone else anymore. I was sick of it. Like I said, I was working in these businesses that sometimes were turning over $1 million a day or £1 million a day down to like $1 million a month. $1 million a month. And, like I said, I was getting paid pretty well. The staff were getting paid pretty well, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't as much as we were lining everyone else's pockets. I was like, we're doing the hard work. We're doing all this amazing stuff. We're making big decisions. We're taking big risks and all this. I mean, it wasn't a huge risk, obviously, but there were these big business management jobs that were getting done, big hours, big responsibility, lots of people, lots of difficult conversations, lots of missed things in my family. Like Christmas, as if retailers get anything off in Christmas. So you're working until like 9 o'clock Christmas Eve and you start again at 5 o'clock in the morning on Boxing Day. Christmas, you're kind of just sleeping to recover from the last 4 weeks. And then, the next couple of weeks are crazy with sales as well. So there was lots of those things that I missed. I used to work Friday nights quite regularly. So I missed out on, going out and that sort of thing, and weekends. So I just kind of got the shits about it all. And like I said, I have absolutely no regrets and no resentment. I learned so much from retail. And I am very, very grateful for the people who were my mentors and my managers when I was there. because I wouldn't be the business manager and the business person that I am today without having all of that experience. So I have to say thank you to all of those beautiful people, and I'll list them all in the show notes. And I hope this has been helpful, and I'm sure that there are a lot of you out there who also used to work in retail or still work in retail, and I'd love to hear from you about your experiences there, and what you do these days, and what you've learned, and what you love and hate about it, and what keeps you going, or what kept you going, and what keeps you there, and all of that sort of thing. So feel free to shoot me a message. It's claire@recoveringperfectionist.online. That'll be in the show notes, so you can find it on the website as well. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I hope this has been interesting and helpful as always, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Okay, bye. And that is absolutely it, my lovely. So I hope you've really enjoyed the episode. It was great fun recording that one, as it is with all of them. If you'd like to connect, I'd love to stay in touch with you. I have a beautiful Facebook group community at bit.ly/The Recovering Perfectionist Crew, with all capital T, R, P and C. I have a massive goal this year to get 50,000 downloads on my podcast, and I've got a YouTube show as well. So I'd love for you to help me out if you can by either subscribing to the podcast on iTunes. So if you want to go over and do that now, that would be awesome. If you have a couple of favourite episodes, or if there's one favourite episode that you've really enjoyed, I would love you to share that with anyone who you think would get as much out of it as you have as well. And while you're in iTunes, if you can jump in and give it a review, that would be amazing. iTunes definitely helps out podcasts that have got some good ratings and reviews and some really interactive listeners. So I would really appreciate your help with getting to my goal of 50,000 in 2017. The show is also available over on YouTube. The links are always in the show notes, so you can head over there. So it's The Recovering Perfectionist on YouTube. There's a channel for that as well. So jump in and leave your comments. You can watch all of the episodes in video. So if you want to see what we look like and our crazy hand gestures and facial expressions and all of that sort of thing, absolutely jump in. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel show as well, and then you'll be kept up to date when there's some new episodes that come in there. So yeah, love your support. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's hello@clairebarton.com.au. Always happy to receive your emails and open up a conversation. All right, big love. I'll chat with you soon. Bye.